think that had you had twins, would you be able to tell them apart?
I mean, parents always say they can, but I don't know. I guess. I mean, I definitely know like the little nuances of my kids' faces and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you could probably
Mannerisms.
see the differences. I mean, even like when I had Holly and stuff, like I would know like all the little different markings like on her back and on her face and stuff like that, you know. I just kind of memorized the map of her and
So if you saw another cat, you would be like, no, that's not her.
yeah, exactly. I would know exactly if it was Holly or not.
I
And
feel like, I like to say that I would be able to do that with Harlow because, a lot of the Wheaten Terriers, especially full blooded ones, they look pretty similar. But I just feel like it's like the mannerisms and there's like little like features, little tiny features that kind of set her apart.
and so I think that's how parents tell twins apart because there's like something very minute that nobody else can see or you know unless you spend a lot of time with those kids. But so I wonder that too sometimes like had I had twins, I had Kira been twins or whatever, would I be able to would I be able to tell them apart?
That'd be funny, especially once they get older and they try to just like fuck with you guys and they
I know that's true.
purposely.
Like the Weasley twins.
Exactly.
And you know they would. And of course they can read each other's minds and stuff like that.
Is that real? Do you think?
No, I mean, I think they probably spend so much time together that they know each other that well, kind of thing. Not like literal mind reading.
You ready? Are we diving in?
Yes, it's Dave.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Aflixionados podcast, episode 37. Available wherever you get your podcasts. Episodes drop on the first Saturday of each month, 5 a.m. Pacific. Find us on YouTube at Aflixionados Podcast. Please give us a like and subscribe. The merch store link can be found in the descriptions of our episodes. My name is Eric, and the other voice occupying your head this time is a proud mother of three, lab geek, comic nerd, my sister, co-host, Stephanie.
Yo ho.
Here on Aflixionados Podcast, we mainly talk about films that range from mind-numbing to mind-blowing. We also cover TV shows and other forms of media. Of course, we will be getting into spoilers here, and there will be only the healthiest amount of expletives tossed in. You have been warned. If you're ready, then get ready, because in this episode, we'll be discussing the comedic, swashbuckling adventure Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, released in 2003, directed by Gore Verbinski.
Excuse me, what?
I used to call it Pirates of the Caribbean, but in any other context, you say Caribbean, right? So I feel like Caribbean is just a bastardization of Caribbean.
I
That's my
disagree.
opinion.
I don't say Caribbean for anything. You see the commercials for the Caribbean cruise or whatever, but I would still say Caribbean cruise. So Pirates of the Caribbean. Do they ever say it in the movie?
I feel like they would have said it at least once. While you look that up, I want to give a little background on this movie here. So obviously this is the first movie in what would later become a film franchise. And this film, like the rest of the franchise, was loosely based on the original ride at the Disney parks and resorts, opening on March 18th, 1967. Love that ride, by the way. Man, that ride is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Certainly a staple of the parks.
Definitely.
Would you say that's one of the top rides at Disneyland for you?
Absolutely. It's always a must ride when I go, you know.
Is that the most anticipated for you when you go there? Like, do you rush to that one, or what's the first ride that you rush to?
Actually, usually the first place I go is Tomorrowland. I don't know why. So now I always associate Tomorrowland with like mornings in Disneyland. And
Interesting.
yeah, I'll
Because it
go
gets
on
busy
Star
later on.
Tours and maybe like I'll go on Star Tours and the Buzz Lightyear ride.
You like the futuristic aspect of it better?
I do. Yeah.
I don't know, for me, because it's like when you enter the park, Tomorrowland's to the right, right?
Yes.
Like the far right. And then what's to the left? Is that like Frontierland?
Yeah.
I think that's usually where I go, like where Indiana Jones is over there.
Yeah, it's like Frontierland and Adventureland, I believe. And then if you go into those, deep into them, then it's New Orleans Square.
Right. I will say, I felt like New Orleans is kind of easy to miss. Like, it's not very big, and really the only thing there is the restaurant and the ride.
And Haunted Mansion.
Is that part of New Orleans? I thought that would have been part of like Adventure or something.
No, it's not. It's actually like when you go. So once you go through Adventureland and you enter New Orleans Square, the first thing you hit is Pirates of the Caribbean. And you go a little
Mm.
further down, and it's Haunted Mansion, like on the other end of New Orleans Square.
So it kind of fits the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Okay. In preparation for this episode, I was watching this clip of just the background for Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Obviously, it's going to be the first pirate themed attraction at Disneyland, but originally it was going to be a walk-through wax museum that was just like all stationary pirates and stuff like that, and you can kind
Hmm.
of get up close and check them out.
That sounds creepy.
During development, yeah, they had to carve out like a big chunk of Anaheim because this wasn't like going to fit within their current scope. So they had to like basically what they did with like Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. They like carve out like a new area and you have to kind of like venture your way out of the park to get there. It's like a whole new wing of the park. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of what Walt Disney was doing with New Orleans. And during that time, they also participated in like the World's Fair and stuff like that, where they
Yeah.
made major advancements in audio animatronics.
Yeah. That was when they did Lincoln and.
hmm And Walt Disney was like, bro, we got to fucking do this in Disneyland. We got to bring these animatronics here verbatim. And so Walt
Yes.
Disney,
Clearly. He's like, bro.
so Walt Disney heavily retooled the attraction and like the area, and he instead wanted to focus more on some sort of like boat dark ride concept, which is what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So that they had to dig out, like a little bit deeper and make like little lakes and rivers and shit like that.
Yeah.
The ride was almost called the Blue Bayou Lagoon, but was
Oh,
renamed
no way.
to Pirates of the Caribbean a couple months
Caribbean.
just before opening.
Of course. So according to Google, because Google knows everything, Pirates of the Caribbean is Pirates of the Caribbean, but otherwise it is pronounced Caribbean. So we're both right.
I guess so. It was just interesting that they were going to call it something generic like Blue Bayou Lagoon.
Right. Well, of course, the restaurant ended up being called the Blue Bayou.
Right, which is cool because that's a throwback to what it was originally going to be called.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I feel like even in other versions of Disneyland and other versions of this ride, they always have some sort of restaurant that's like embedded next to the
It's
ride.
iconic now, even in Shanghai with their fancy new ride and their fancy new technology, they have the Blue Bayou there too. But what I think is interesting is that the Blue Bayou is obviously kind of New Orleans themed,
hmm
and then it takes you into the Caribbean.
It starts off in a bayou, like it starts
Yeah,
off in like the south,
they have
and
like alligators and yeah, and like little
it's like a
shacks and
creek.
yeah, in the swamp or whatever, and fireflies everywhere, and then all of a sudden,
Pirates.
yeah, you're in the ocean with pirates.
That's cool because I like how it surprises you. I remember as a kid, I was like a little freaked out by it because it has a couple drops, but they're small.
It used to be one big drop.
Did it?
Yes,
I don't remember it being that big.
it was. It used to be one big drop, and then they separated it into two little drops because they wanted kids to be able to go on it, and that drop was not very. I mean, kids obviously did still go on it, but I'm sure you know.
But there's no restraint on the boats.
No,
So
yeah,
it's not that
and
intense.
I remember always like preparing myself for this drop, and then at one point it became two drops, and I was like,
That was it?
what?
Yeah. Because that
you
was
know,
right after that talking skull
yeah,
thing, right?
dead man tail, no tails, or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny because right after that intense drop, it seems like it has a weird mixture of themes going on because it has like thunder and rain and it has this like intense drop before, and then it's super chill.
Yeah, you're just going through kind of treasure caves and seeing the skeletons that tried to get that treasure before, and
It didn't really have like any set characters. It was just all kind of generic pirates,
yeah,
generic people.
yeah, it's all just you're just going through you're just kind of taking a ride through pirate life. But then after the movies, it became Davy Jones, like, oh, I'm looking for Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of them retooling it.
I actually liked it.
I understand why they did it.
I mean, I know the movie is based on the ride, but adding more of the movie into the ride, I was okay with it. And then, of course, adding Jack Sparrow to the ride was always fun. After the movie, they put him in a lot, and
Oh
then
yeah.
they took him out almost completely, and so now he's only at the very end.
That was the one thing I liked about the tie-in with the movies is that he would pop up in the background. So they would still have a lot of the original characters there, but then he would be like peeking up like behind a barrel or
Yeah,
something.
that's all gone. They took him out. I think after maybe the whole Amber Heard thing,
Oh, you think so?
maybe.
Dang. Did you ever hear about the controversy with the ride before, like before Johnny Depp and all that stuff?
No, I don't think so.
So the controversy over the ride, it played heavily into the pirate life, the ravaging, stealing, wenching, and all
Hmm.
that stuff. So there was a big section, and I think there's a point where the boat would actually stop, and then it would listen to conversations by the animatronics. Whereas like now, it just keeps moving the entire time, right?
Yeah,
There's like a little like walkway bridge, and just before you go under that, I think you like slow to a stop and you witness this auction. Pirates were auctioning off women, and you get to witness that whole thing.
I
and
remember that.
and everyone was like going crazy over this red haired, she was also wearing like this like sexy red dress or something like that.
Yeah, Scarlett. She's famous, and she's in the movie too.
That was the one that everyone was always swooning over. So there was, I guess, a lot of controversy at some point where people are like, this is so sexist, and this is so offensive, and this needs to be changed. There's even an area where not long after that, there's like these sections where the male pirates were chasing like these women
The
around.
women, yeah, and then they changed it so the women are chasing them now, like with
Yeah,
rolling pins and stuff, like chasing them out of their house and
to
stuff.
make it more comical. And I think the some of the ones where the guys are still chasing the women, they gave them like a tray of food or something like that. So they're chasing the food and less so the woman
That's so
to make it
funny.
more kid friendly.
Yeah,
They heavily retooled that auction area, so they made it where Scarlet is like a female pirate now, and she's no longer being
yeah,
sold. So
yeah,
I thought that was kind of interesting.
yeah. It's not an auction anymore at all. I do remember that. I didn't remember what it was, but it's not an auction.
Yeah.
I love that ride, but I remember like I used to go in high school, and then that's where I would like take a nap because it's a very relaxing ride, you know.
I will say that ride is perfect for midday because when it's like super hot outside and you go through that ride, and that ride is pretty long.
Yeah,
So you're being entertained while you're inside where it's air conditioned.
most of the line is inside too, so you get a break from the heat, a nice long ride underground in the dark, in the cool,
Oh, so
in
nice.
water. Yeah.
Now, when they first announced this movie, what were your initial thoughts? I, for one, was like, how the hell are you going to make a movie out of this generic ride that has no characters?
I felt the same way. I was like, I mean, because it was one of the first, if not the first, and I was like, they're turning a ride into a movie, but okay.
That was like the dumbest shit I've ever heard, and I couldn't have been more wrong.
I know I was interested. I was like, oh, we'll see where it goes, and of course, I had Keira Knightley, and I liked her, and Orlando
Mm,
Bloom, and we liked him, and Johnny Depp, and he was always iconic for like all those Tim Burton movies and stuff. So
hmm.
everyone knew who Johnny Depp was, and then of course they, in the trailers and stuff, they would always show the scene with the dog in the jail cell.
That was one of my favorite parts of the ride was those prisoners trying to get the keys from the dog, and I loved
Yeah,
how they kept that in the movie.
I know. And then later, they call back to it when Jack is trying to call him, and he finally starts coming.
Aw.
Yeah, so definitely very, very impressed with how they turned that ride, the story they came up with. I feel like this movie has everything in it. It has good comedy, it has a lot of fight scenes, it has plot, and then a plot twist
Suspense.
and another plot, and you know, was it double crossing and triple crossing?
Amazing dialogue and music. Oh, the music is it. I feel like the music makes the movie. The movie would feel so much different without the music.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very iconic, and it became so popular afterwards. I don't think I had ever actually bought, a movie score before,
Hmm.
but that one I did buy. I bought soundtracks before, but never a movie score.
The score for this movie was what made me finally realize that the French horn is the shit.
The French horn is the shit.
And I had no desire to ever play it in band. I never even knew it existed until probably like late into band. But man, the composer for Pirates of the Caribbean, holy shit, they know how to get a dope sound out of a French horn.
If you know how to play it, it's very majestic. Kind of makes me wish that I would have learned that instead of the flute, but
I feel like it's kind of unassuming when you look at it. It looks a little strange. It looks like you're playing it upside down, honestly.
yeah, it does.
What I like about it is that it kind of reminds me of a trumpet, but it's like
Curly?
it's got this powerful punch. Like no, it can play high notes, it can play low notes, and it's just it sounds.
And everything feels so, yeah, full. Everything feels very full bodied when all the sounds that come out of that instrument are just so, they take up the whole room, you know?
Oh yeah, the French horn. It has this like triumphant sound to it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also kind of odd because you're basically fisting this instrument while you play it.
Yep.
It's one instrument that I recall seeing with a bell where you stick your fist in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like any other instrument, you do not put your fist in the bell.
All right, so the movie starts off. We got Governor Swann and his young daughter Elizabeth. They come across an eerie shipwreck. This is kind of like almost like a flashback in a way. You just don't know it yet. It's really creepy because they're floating across. It's really quiet. The water is really calm, and they slowly see that there's this shipwreck nearby, and they're trying to see if there's anyone that needs help or needs rescuing.
Elizabeth sees a boy floating in the water on a plank of wood. And so they fish him out. Immediately, Elizabeth's dad is like, "You're in charge of him. I want you to stay with him, look after him." And I'm like, okay, that's a weird thing to ask of your adolescent daughter, but whatever. And she sees his medallion on that he's wearing on his necklace, and she's like, "Oh shit, he's a pirate," and they don't like pirates.
How did she know what that medallion meant? You know what I mean? Because it's like it has this ornate design on it. It looks pretty
Well, that has
fancy.
a skull on it, so she probably just saw the skull and was like, "Oh, pirate."
And it's like guaranteed pirate. I don't know
Not
because it's like,
necessarily, but she was afraid that they would think that, so she hid it.
and she was right, but it seemed more Aztec to me, reminiscent of like that like Aztec face on the calendar.
They call it Aztec gold, so it is Aztec gold. But it still has that, skull looking, situation. So
They probably educated her on pirates so that way she knew what to look out for and what to avoid.
exactly. I mean, she even knew the songs and stuff.
The strange thing is that I felt like it made her even more fascinated by pirates because I don't think she
Yeah.
ever really shared that hatred or disdain for them.
No.
She was always like morbidly curious about them.
Yeah. So it was more one of those situations where they're like, "Stay away from this," and she's like, "Oh, stay away from this. What is it all about?" And then she's into it.
Just before the flashback ends, she sees this ship kind of floating off into the fog and it has black sails. And then she snaps awake and it's present day. I don't know. I was thinking of it like it was probably a skewed memory because this was supposed to almost give you backstory, but also it's like a dream at the same time.
That's true because she is dreaming it. Yeah. Because even later in the day, she sees Will and she's like, "Oh, I dreamt about you last night. About
Yeah.
the day that we found you."
I'm thinking that it probably didn't happen exactly like that, but maybe it's just like her mind kind of like retelling certain things, but just not accurately.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it wasn't even foggy that day, but in her dream, it's foggy. Who knows? I want to say before we get a little further on, for you listeners out there, you may not know this, but Eric always sends me notes before we do these things, and I want to contest something you said in the notes. Uh, Elizabeth wakes up from her dream of her flashback and to her father coming in, knocking on the door. "Are you decent? Can I come in?" And then he comes in, followed by a bunch of servants, and he brings her a dress. And in your notes, you said that he forces her to wear the dress. He does not. I disagree with that choice of words.
So she was willingly wearing this dress?
Well, he wasn't. He definitely wasn't forcing her, but he was just like, "Oh, I was hoping that you would wear it for the ceremony today." And she's like, "Okay, yeah,
He
sure."
was pressuring her into wearing it. And she didn't know what
I
she was
don't think she.
agreeing to.
I mean, if your dad buys you a nice dress, you wouldn't be like, "Oh no, I don't really want to wear that."
I think she didn't realize that she didn't want to wear it until it was being applied to her, and she's just like, "Oh fuck, this is not comfortable at all."
Yeah, but she was still gonna wear it. It's not like she was gonna be like. It's just not like she was all of a sudden like, "Oh, I don't want to wear it anymore." She's still like, "Oh, beautiful dress from my dad, the latest fashion in Paris. Yeah, I'm totally wearing this." From a girl's point of view, she was gonna wear it. Trust me.
And the only thing I have to say about that is, what does she normally wear? Because it didn't seem like she was used to wearing a corset.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was wondering too. I was thinking of maybe researching the fashion of that time and that area, the Caribbean. But I never got a chance, and I was wondering to myself too, what the heck was she wearing then? Maybe like the Bridgerton style stuff where it kind of just flares out from, right under the bust area rather than, tied around the waist and then
Ends at the ribs and then just kind of like opens up.
yeah, exactly. So, obviously there's a part for your boobs, but then after that it just kind of goes down instead of tightening up.
Sure, sure.
Maybe that's more the sort of thing that they wore then.
It's 8 years later, right? And we're in Port Royal, which is, I think, Jamaica. Elizabeth Swann is played by Keira Knightley.
No way.
You said that you were already into Keira Knightley before this movie?
Yeah. Yeah, I liked her stuff, I think. Or either that or that was well, no, yeah, I think this might have been the gateway into my Keira Knightley fandom. I don't know.
Is it so much that you like the actress, or do you just like the style of movies she's in?
I think it's a little bit more I do feel like she's a little bit typecast. She's always playing characters from like the 1800s and stuff. And so yeah, you're right. It's not. I think it's might be more of the her roles, and I do think she's pretty.
But you do like her as an actress overall.
Yeah, I like her as an. I mean, I don't think she's the best actress in the world, but I like her and I like the stuff that she plays. I like the roles that she plays. The Pride and Prejudice is one of my faves.
Man, that is a pretty trippy movie, I must say. And I'm not even into those types of movies. So I wanted to ask you, what if instead of Keira Knightley, what if it was Natalie Portman in this role?
Fuck that movie.
You'd boycott it.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I like Natalie Portman, but I disagree with my husband's love of Natalie Portman.
His unhealthy love of Natalie Portman.
No, I like. I mean, she's great in Leon the Professional. She's great in V for Vendetta. She's
Yep.
pretty much great in everything she does. But at the same time, I hate her guts.
Only because he loves her.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, luckily for you, this is Keira Knightley instead of Natalie Portman.
Whew, thank goodness.
So why is Elizabeth even getting dressed up in the first place? What is she getting ready for?
She's getting ready for what was he, Captain Norrington's promotion to Commodore.
He was a lieutenant before.
Lieutenant, whatever. That's what, yeah. Whatever he was before. I don't know about naval
Ranks or anything
ranks.
like that.
Yeah. So yeah, he's being promoted to Commodore, and that one I do know is that it's Commodore because from here and forevermore they call him Commodore Norrington,
Mm-hmm.
and her father is the governor, Governor Swann.
Played by Jonathan Pryce.
Yes. Then he gets it interrupted to because he has a visitor, and that visitor is none other than Will Turner, the blacksmith's apprentice, who has come to deliver a sword.
Played by Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom, our friend, and he's there to deliver the sword that's going to be a gift from the governor to Commodore Norrington. Of course, he breaks something in the house while he's waiting for Governor Swann to come down, which is fun. Governor Swann looks at the sword and he's like, "This is fine craftsmanship. Tell your master." And he's like, "Yeah, it's always nice to hear that you've done a good job." And it's pretty clear that he made the sword, but
Yeah.
of course he can't take the credit because he's just an apprentice.
And then we're introduced to Captain Jack Sparrow, played by Johnny Depp, which is probably one of the best introductions to a Disney character that I've ever seen.
I know, seriously, it's great because he's in his tiny little boat. It has a sail and everything, so it kind of looks like a tiny ship.
Yeah. I love how they do it because it has like the heroic like dun 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 standing on top of the mast or whatever it's called. And then it like pans out and it's just tiny ass boat.
Yeah, and then he jumps down and it's taken in water, so he's trying to kind of bucket it out, and that's not working. So then it
Yeah.
just shows him, standing on the
He comes
little
back
crow's
up.
nest area, just majestically sailing into port.
Looking all proud.
Yeah, and then it backs out, and you just see that the whole boat has sunk, and the only part that's sticking out of the water is the part he's standing on.
Which is so ridiculous. Like it's still kind of
I know.
like
How
sailing
would it?
through the water somehow.
It must have had some crazy forward momentum to still be going. And then he just steps onto the port,
Yeah. Barely reaches it.
just steps right on, and then he bribes the, I don't know, record keeper or whatever you call him to not take his information down.
That is funny. But how good is Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow?
Amazing. I mean, he said at some point who he based his character on, and I can't remember who it is, but they got that guy to be in a later movie as his dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
The character's iconic because like he's got the typical pirate look, but it's I think it's really like the mannerisms and the quotes that he says.
the way he talks, the way he moves, the way he walks, all drunkenly all the time.
Exactly. Like he's flamboyant, but also he's perpetually drunk, it seems like.
Right, and he's charismatic in his own way.
He's supremely confident in himself for no fucking reason.
Yeah,
Because he's kind of a fuck up.
yeah, a little bit.
But somehow it always manages to work out in his favor in the end.
That's probably what makes him so successful.
He's both the worst pirate and the best pirate the world has ever seen.
Right, a little of both at the same time.
So yeah, he arrives at Port Royal, and it seems like he's looking to upgrade to a proper ship, but we don't know what purpose yet.
You know, at this point, two things are happening at once. He's trying to procure a fast boat, and you know, at one point the guy says, "Oh, there's no ship that can match the Interceptor in speed." And Jack Sparrow's like, "Oh, I've heard of one. It's the Black Pearl." And he's like, "There's no real ship that can match the Interceptor in speed."
Hmm.
And the other guy's like, "The Black Pearl is real. I've seen it." And they start arguing. And during this time, the ceremony's going on, and Elizabeth is standing off to the edge of the fort, and she's really suffering in the sun in this corset. She can't freaking breathe. And it turns out that she really can't breathe because she ends up passing out.
What does it feel like being in a corset? Because that looks like it's terrible.
No, it's not that bad. I mean, it squeezes you and stuff, but like, no one's gonna pass out. Like, I feel like they definitely
They
played it
played it
up
up.
for this.
Yeah. I want to be honest here. Sometimes I feel like if I have a big lunch, my work shirt feels like a corset sometimes.
I can assure you, it does not.
I'm like bursting at the seams.
Yeah, I know how that feels, but yeah, lunch makes you feel like you're bursting at the seams, and corsets make you feel slim
And pretty.
and trim and pretty, and you know, like you have
The
an
hourglass
hourglass
shape.
figure. Yeah. So Jack makes it onto the Interceptor. The guards chase him on there, and they're like, "You need to leave," and they start arguing a little bit. And at that time, Elizabeth passes out.
So Norrington kind of like pulls her aside, right? Norrington played by Jack Davenport, and he is about to propose to Elizabeth, and then it seems like she's kind of reacts to it, but really she's reacting to the fact that she can't breathe and she just faints.
She falls off the edge, and he turns around, and she's gone.
Now, what is this area too? Because it seems super dangerous. Like, why is there no wall here? You can straight up walk to the very edge of it.
And just dive right off.
Yeah.
Forts. And nobody, there was no such thing as childproofing back then.
No, yeah, she fell right into the ocean.
Thankfully, not hitting any rocks, and so that was there. He was about to jump in after her, and the other guards were like, "No, sir, the rocks. It's a miracle she missed them." It's funny because Jack Sparrow, being a pirate, you would think he would be like, who
Right.
cares, and continue stealing the boat.
He has no idea who fell into the water, but he feels inclined to go help for some reason.
Which is yeah, it's interesting because that's unpirate like of him, but at the same time, it seems characteristic of him because at some point later on in the movie, he he's trying to make a plan with Barbosa, and his plan includes like not killing anybody. So you know, you get the idea that Jack has not always been, you know, the worst pirate.
A completely terrible person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild because it's like pirates still exist today, but it's a lot less glamorous, right? Like it's not as interesting as they depict in movies and stuff like that in TV shows because it's literally just like people with like AKs that hijack a ship and they're like, "I'm the captain now."
Right? Or, you know, people who sell things on the black market or something like that.
Modern day pirates are the people on torrent sites.
I was a pirate once.
Hey, the Pirate Bay. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. So, and that was huge back when this movie came out too.
Elizabeth lands in the water and she's basically drowning to death, right?
Hmm.
There's like this pulse that shoots through the water, which was kind of interesting because everyone can see it.
Yeah, it comes from the medallion. Very clearly comes from the medallion. So the medallion pretty much calls to their cursed victims.
And I was kind of curious about it. Does it only call to them when it touches water, or is it calling to the crew because she's dying?
I'm guessing because it finally touched water.
Does it have to be the ocean, or can it be any kind of water?
I'm thinking it's the ocean because they're in the ocean, like pirates. They sail in the ocean.
Is that the only way that they can track these down? Is once the pieces touch water? Because I felt like if they just constantly travel the world and visit all these towns, and when they're nearby, I thought it kind of like draws them in, almost like the ring, right? The One Ring.
Yeah.
I always felt like they just could kind of like sense generally
Hmm.
where the gold pieces are, and they just kind of travel in that direction. But I guess it can ping them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I got out of it, pretty much. Which is interesting. Kind of makes no sense, but is also kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's like their lifelong purpose is to track these down and hopefully lift the curse. At the same time, it's such a impossible task because they probably spent these gold pieces all over the world and they're like, fuck, I
Exactly.
don't remember. I didn't get a receipt for all my purchases. How am I supposed to know where they went?
That's why they've been cursed for such a long time, just looking for these, and then this is the last one, and they're desperate to find it because that's it, and then they're done. They can all go back to living real lives and feeling things and tasting things, and
Imagine how long they've been missing just that last piece and they're just like, fuck, we're so close. We're at
I
99%.
know. Imagine. And then they finally find it, so of course they're going to do whatever they can to get it. In the meantime, Jack's the only one who can figure out that she's suffering from the corset because apparently it's common knowledge back then that corsets kill people. I don't know. And at that point, even though he totally dove in the water and saved her, they arrest him.
Oh, also, really quick before that, when he realizes that, she's going to be all right, he notices the medallion around her neck and he's like, whoa, where'd you
Oh,
get
yeah.
that? Because he recognizes it and he knows
Yeah.
exactly what that is. But he's playing it cool. He doesn't let anyone know that it's very important.
Yeah. So he's arrested, but then he's able to turn the tide and kind of capture Elizabeth and use her as a hostage. And I love how cocky he is from right from the start.
What'd you think of that? Because there's almost like this like flirtiness that Jack has towards Elizabeth, but then he immediately turns around and he's just like, don't come close, I'm a killer.
Yeah, of course he's going to do what he needs to do to. He's a little bit good and a little bit despicable, so
Hmm.
I feel like it's pretty characteristic, and he does it multiple times. But I love when he's like, "Oh, just always remember this is the day you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow," and then he swings off like he knows that all this is going to happen. He's just really playing it by ear.
He always does. I don't think he ever really has a fleshed out plan. He just kind of like goes with the
He just
flow.
goes with it, yeah, which is hilarious.
He's good at
Of course,
improvising.
that makes for and that makes for a very entertaining situation all the time
Yeah.
when he's involved.
Also, Brenda noticed a fun link between this movie and Game of Thrones. So Jonathan Pryce played the High Sparrow in this show, and Jack's last name is Sparrow.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Oh, that was funny because I didn't catch that myself.
I also did not. I mean, he's also well. I guess he was old then, and he's definitely old now, but he's just always old. But yeah, I can see it now. I mean, obviously he didn't have the wig in Game of Thrones.
Right, exactly. Much different. So it almost looks like Jack Sparrow gets away and he tries to hide out in this like barn looking thing and it ends up being the place where the blacksmith, Will Turner, works.
Hmm. And but he is able to find the tools that he needs in there to break his handcuffs, and then Will Turner comes back and a sword fight ensues. One of many, many awesome sword fights. But this fight was especially awesome to me. I love the part where they start fighting on the wheelbarrow thingamajig. That
That
just
little
has the two
wagon.
wheels and it's kind of teetering and tottering
That was cool.
back and forth. Oh, I have a visitor. Hi. That's fine. Okay. I'm gonna see. I gotta see if Daddy will bring me a snack.
Are you guys the types of parents where you're like, we don't want them watching tablets or anything like that? We don't want them watching YouTube?
Please. I mean, we were, I think, at some point, but it kind of eventually just kind of became inevitable.
That's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're fighting on this thing and it's kind of teetering and tottering and they have to balance on it and they're launching each other into the rafters on this thing and
It's getting strangely acrobatic.
yeah, it makes for a very entertaining sword fight. But of course, in the end, the blacksmith who is drunkenly asleep wakes up and knocks him out by smashing his liquor bottle over his head. So all of that for nothing. That entire fight.
Technically, Jack wins the duel against Will,
Yeah.
and Will's like, "You cheated," and he's like, "Pirate."
Yeah, I know. Pirate.
He has no shame.
No, he does not. Which is great. He ends up in jail. While he's in jail, the Black Pearl comes.
Oh shit, man! I love this aura about the Black Pearl. Everyone kind of talks about it like it's this folk tale, right? Like it's
Yeah,
some
like it's
sort
a
of
myth.
urban legend.
Yeah.
It seems like enough people know about it, but no one has ever truly seen it. So I wonder how rare it is to actually come across the Black Pearl.
Yeah. Of course, we see it all the time because the entire movie is about it. But, in this world, it seems pretty rare to have seen it.
The notorious Black Pearl, which is, it seems like Jack Sparrow, he knows quite a bit about it.
Yes, because he captained it at some point. But what happened?
Which is kind of odd because it seems like the Black Pearl is almost like this supernatural entity, but also at the same time, isn't it also like a mortal ship?
Yeah. I think maybe because it's manned by an entirely cursed crew
Hmm,
that can't be killed themselves. Not that the ship becomes unkillable, but I think it becomes kind of hard to, take it over or defeat it when you can't kill anybody on it.
true. Yeah, good luck trying to commandeer that ship.
Yeah, so I think it becomes kind of a myth in itself when the crew itself is kind of mythical almost.
Yep, so it shows up at Port Royal and is attacked by the Black Pearl. It's basically just like laying waste to Port Royal. This is the same ship that Elizabeth saw as a child. It has the same black sails and it's rocking the Jolly Roger flag, which is the black flag with the white skull and the crossed swords. Basically, the stereotypical sign for all pirates.
Yeah, exactly. So, while they're just attacking the town, so the crew, they come to the Swann residence and the servants are like, they're coming for you. You're the governor's daughter, like thinking that they're going to take her as a hostage
Right.
for whatever they're actually there for. It turns out that they're there for her not because she's the governor's daughter, but because she has what they want. So they're eventually able to capture her and she invokes the right of parley, which is old pirate code for, getting a chance to meet with the captain and negotiate before they do whatever the heck they're going to do to you, I guess. So you're at
Hmm.
that point protected from harm until you meet with the captain.
And so we come to find out that the head honcho is Captain Barboza, played by Jeffrey Rush.
Such a good character.
Good character, although I have some complaints about the character, and I'll mention that towards the end of the episode.
Mm, I already disagree.
Great acting, though.
I know. So she knows that they're looking for the medallion, so she holds it up and is like, I know you're here for this. I'll give you this if you leave Port Royal alone. And
Hmm.
they play like they're like it's not important, but then she pretends she's gonna drop it in the ocean. Everyone's like, oh,
Calls their bluff.
yeah.
Not like they couldn't go searching for it, you know what I mean?
I know, like just dive in. It's not like they did like they can obviously walk in the ocean without breathing and stuff. So they make a deal with her. Okay, we'll leave Port Royal alone if you give us the medallion. So she gives them the medallion and mentions at some point that her name is Elizabeth Turner, which is obviously not her name. She's just looking for, or because I guess she was thinking like, oh, maybe they are looking for the governor's daughter, and so she's like, oh, I'm just a maid in the governor's household, and they're like, Turner, eh?
Mm. Could she possibly be the descendant of Bootstrap Bill?
Exactly. So they go to set sail, and she's like, take me back home." And they're like, "No, we're leaving, but we
Nah,
never said we would take you back."
you're a prisoner now. I like this area too because, I mean, granted, it's a lot of talking, but it gives a lot of backstory. So Barbosa invites Elizabeth to dine privately with them. And this is where he kind of goes over the story of the curse, right? The curse that all the crew members suffer from. And they're essentially immortal undead that suffer from an insatiable hunger. Food does not ever fill them, and so they can eat forever and still be
Mm-hmm.
hungry. They can drink forever and still be thirsty. They just basically can never enjoy anything, any of the joys of life because
Mm-hmm.
they're like undead, they're like zombies.
Which seems pretty shitty, but they also look really cool.
They do, yeah. At all times, they kind of have this facade that makes them difficult to identify. But in the moonlight, you get to see their true form, which is like the skeletal, decaying body.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, the curse began after the Spanish conquistador Cortez basically destroyed the Aztec Empire and stole all their gold for himself. And so the Aztec people, they cursed the gold that he took. Sometime later, Barbosa and his crew found the Aztec treasure and they became victims to the curse themselves.
Exactly.
In order for the curse to finally be lifted, they would also need Bootstrap Bill Turner's blood. So they're like, oh shit, we actually happened to find his child, Elizabeth Turner. So we're going to spill her blood instead. Perfect.
Yeah. So they go ahead and take her to what is the place called? It's a skull shaped. Oh, Isla de Muerta.
Hmm.
Skull shaped island, and that happens to be where all that Aztec treasure is, including the giant chest of Aztec gold. After the pirates kind of ravage Port Royal, and Will ends up getting knocked out, he wakes up the next morning. He happened to see Elizabeth getting taken right before he got knocked out. And so he wakes up the next morning and is immediately like, "Elizabeth!" And he goes and finds where Commodore Norrington and Governor Swann are kind of planning. And he's like, "Let's go save her." But they are not concerned for whatever reason, especially considering that's Governor Swann's daughter. And so Will decides to take it upon himself to go after her. And who other to know where the heck they were going than Jack Sparrow?
It kind of sucks for him, right? Because he just despises Jack and he hates all pirates deeply. It's like at this point, Jack is his only hope for finding Elizabeth.
Will goes and visits Jack in jail and reveals that, oh, he helped build the cells, and he knows how to dislodge the cell doors without unlocking them, which he does in one quick move with the bench and immediately frees Jack.
Oh, you need some leverage.
Yep.
This was the area of the movie where they pay homage to the pirates ride with the dog, right?
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, because that's an iconic scene. Of course, towards the end of the ride, you get with the prisoners trying to goad the dog into giving him the key. And fun fact: in the Shanghai version of the ride, it shows that scene, but they're all skeletons.
Oh, interesting. Like they died
So it's a
already?
bunch of skeletons. Yeah. So it's a skeleton dog with the keys, and all the skeletons with their arms through the bars and stuff.
Oh, yeah, because their ride is much closer to the movie. It takes more reference from the
More
movie.
based on the. It's funny because the movie was based on the ride, but that ride is definitely based on the
The
movies.
movie, which is based off
Because
of the OG ride.
yeah, I love the way that they ended up commandeering the ship.
Oh, this was like one of the funnest parts of the entire movie.
I know. So they attempt to steal the Dauntless, and they chase after it with the Interceptor, which is, of course, the fastest ship in the waters besides the Black Pearl,
Which has
right?
been mentioned several times, right? That like no real ship can outpace the Interceptor, and so they make it seem like the Dauntless is their main target.
So they come with the Interceptor, and everybody from the Interceptor boards the Dauntless, and Jack and Will quietly
Sneak onto the Interceptor.
sneak onto the Interceptor and sail off with that. And of course, they can't catch them because it's the fastest ship.
Oh my god, this was so fucking awesome because as an audience member and like seeing it for the first time, You're just like, how are they going to get away from the interceptor? It's like the quickest ship. They obviously catch up to it easily, and little do they know that they turn around and Will and Jack are like sailing away on the interceptor, and they're like, "Fuck!"
Yeah.
That guy's like, "That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen," and he's just like, "So it would seem." Like he's just like so annoyed
I know.
because he straight up got outsmarted by Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, definitely.
Damn.
So their plan is to sail to Tortuga to get a crew and then sail to Isla de la Muerta to go save Elizabeth, right?
Yep. So they run into Jack's old pal Gibbs over at Tortuga.
That guy's so funny. This is one of my favorite scenes because he's sleeping with the pigs, right?
Yeah.
Like in on the
In the
ride,
ride.
another
Mhm.
homage to the ride. And they splash water on him, and then of course he wakes up and they convince him to go to the bar or whatever, and then Will splashes him again and he's like, "Blast, I'm already awake," which was one of my favorite lines.
And my favorite line is what he says in response to that. I was enjoying the scenes as I was watching the movie again, but that scene made me laugh out loud again.
Yeah, it cracks me up every time.
He was so serious when he said that too. He was like, "That was for the
Yeah.
smell."
But yeah, Jack's able to convince Gibbs, and Gibbs is like, "Yeah, I can get a crew for you by tomorrow."
Somehow.
And it is a ragtag crew of misfit pirates for sure.
That's kind of redundant because I feel like every pirate crew is
It's
always
probably a
some
ragtag crew of
ragtag
misfit
crew.
pirates.
Yeah.
You have the guy with no tongue whose parrot talks for him. You have a small guy. You have a woman.
This was actually kind of cool because we learned some backstory about Jack Sparrow. Will is talking to Gibbs, and he explains like the shit that Jack has gone through, and the fact that he once used to be the captain of the Black Pearl himself until Barbosa
What?
organized the rest of the crew to mutiny against him, and then Barbosa
That's fucked up.
marooned Jack on some fucking remote island in the middle of nowhere, leaving only a pistol and one bullet, seemingly to, allow him to kill himself.
Yeah. And then he obviously made it off the island, and the rumor is that he made a rope out of his own hair and tied two tortoises together.
It's like the story gets even more ridiculous as
I know.
time goes on.
And, and rope and rode them back into civilization.
Oh my god, like he's like some god of the sea or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool to, of course, funny to find out that story, but also a little bit sad because it sucks that that happened to him. Seemingly because he wasn't piratey enough. He wasn't
Yeah.
as ruthless as the rest of them, and so they were ruthless to him.
Shout out to Zoe Saldana too as Anna Maria.
Right before she was all huge and
Yeah, when I saw this movie, I had no idea that she would go on to star in all these major movies later on.
right. Good for her.
This is kind of like part of Jack's backstory too, is that obviously he never used that bullet in the gun, and he refuses to use that bullet.
Yeah, he's saving it for Barbosa.
He's carrying this vendetta with him, and he's just like, no, I'm never going to use this bullet because it belongs to one person. I'm not going to rest until I get to use that on him.
Yeah. Another interesting fact is that he has this compass that seems to, they mentioned he has a
Looks
compass that
broken.
doesn't point north, but you find out that it points to. Do they explain exactly what it points to?
I thought that pointed to the gold. I thought that's how they found it.
No, it points to. Well, they later reveal that it points to what you want the most,
Mm.
and so at that time it was pointing to the Black Pearl
Ah,
because that
gotcha.
was what he wanted his ship back. So that's how he's able to follow the Black Pearl everywhere. Is that the
Yeah.
compass points to it, and they follow it to the isle where
The Black Pearl
the
is.
gold is, the Black Pearl is, the gold is, and they catch the whole exchange where they're standing over the gold and
No one is ever really going to ever steal that compass from him because it looks broken. It just spins randomly.
yeah,
But if you really know what it is, you'll understand how valuable that thing can be.
yeah.
Did it ever explain where he got it from?
Later in another movie they do.
Oh, another movie. Okay.
Yeah, so in this case, they take Elizabeth, and she thinks they're gonna like basically drain her over the gold, but it turns out they just want to cut her hand, get some blood on the medallion, and drop it in there. And then after that, they'll
Do
do
whatever
whatever
they
they want,
want.
I guess.
Hmm.
But they drop the medallion in there, and everyone's like, "Did it work?" And so he shoots one of his crew members, and they're like,
Nope.
"Aw!" And then he's like, "Wait a second, hey!"
But it's like, I feel like that's part of being a pirate too, is that no one ever really fully trusts each other.
That was something, yeah, something that Andrew was pointing out, that there's double crossing, there's triple crossing, there's quadruple crossing, and
Oh yeah.
at the end of it, everyone's just out for themselves,
Basically, yeah.
and that's why they just keep switching sides over and over because,
Yeah, there's no loyalty, there's no allegiance.
yeah, exactly, pirates, I guess.
They're so easy to go with the flow because they don't, for the most part, they don't really hold grudges. They're just like, it is what it is. I'll work with them again in order to get what I want.
Elizabeth and Will and the medallion are able to escape, and they make it back to the interceptor, and the rest of the crew's like, "Where's Jack?" Will's like, he didn't make it. He
Damn.
got left behind or whatever, and they're just like, "All right, let's go."
Yep. That's also part of the pirate code is that, if you don't make it back, they're not going to risk their lives looking for you.
Which, to be clear, is more a set of guidelines than anything.
As explained by Barbosa, yeah.
They follow the code when it's convenient for them, but then it's guidelines when it's not.
Right. I mean, does that really surprise you though? Because these are pirates; they don't follow any rules. So I was actually surprised there's a code to begin with.
Yeah. So the Black Pearl actually follows the Interceptor, and at the time, the Interceptor, of course, they're like, "Oh, there's no real ship that can match the Interceptor in speed," but it turns out the not real ship is real, and it is quickly gaining on them. So they start dumping everything heavy, including the cannons.
It ain't enough.
It ain't enough. So, they swing themselves around, and they end up fighting each other, shooting whatever the heck they can, since they dumped all the cannons, which is hilarious. So they're like shooting silverware out the cannons and stuff like that.
Which doesn't really do that much damage to the ship, but I mean, it could potentially kill people if they weren't undead.
Fortunately for that crew, they're all undead, so those forks aren't going to kill them. Well, they actually have Jack Sparrow in a cell on that ship.
Oh, they could kill him.
Yeah, they could totally kill him, but instead he ends up being able to escape.
That's what's so funny about it is that he got fucked over by his crew, but his crew kind of got what they deserved because they all fell victim to this curse and actually spared Jack Sparrow.
Exactly. That's kind of that kind of mirrors the story that Andrew told me about how the crew would be hired as privateers, and they would decide that they want to go loot another ship, and so they would leave the captain behind and then go loot the other ship, and then all get captured and hanged, and then that captain survives.
You're just
That
like,
sort of
oh.
mirrors this story, except they all turn into undead instead of getting hanged.
They have plenty of chances to kill Jack Sparrow, but instead they keep him alive, and then somehow he manages to find them again, and then they have to go like drop him off somewhere and maroon him again, and he's like always comes back somehow. He's like, you forgot one thing. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow.
So they definitely lose that battle, and the entire crew is captured and onto the Black Pearl.
And the interceptor goes down to Davy Jones's locker.
Oh, R.I.P. the Interceptor.
We barely knew ye.
Yes, but you were fast, just not as fast as Black
I
Pearl.
love how they keep that throughout the rest of the movies, though, and they never take that away. Because I feel like they could have easily just like downplayed the Black Pearl, but I love how they still utilize that trait of the Black Pearl is that it's still the quickest ship in the entire film franchise.
Yeah, and boy, does that ship go through a lot. But in this case, Will, he's trying to bargain for Elizabeth's safety. In doing that, he reveals himself as Bootstrap's son, the real Turner. And then he threatens his own life and is able to barter for Elizabeth's safety. Or, they swear not to hurt her, right?
Let her go, but they didn't say how they're going to let her go.
They're going to let her go and not hurt the crew. Nothing about Jack. So they end up letting her go off the plank.
Oh, she walks the plank.
Yes, she does. And they send Jack along with her.
Yep. On the same island that he was marooned on before.
The same island. So this is where we find out what actually happened to him the last time he was on this island. So as he said, it turns out that what was it, the rum runners were using it as a cache,
Yeah.
and so he actually finds their old stash, and he busts out some. He's like, it looks like they haven't been here in a while. He busts out some old rum, and he said he was there for 3 days, and eventually the rum runners came, and he's able to barter for passage off the island. So basically, he drank rum for 3 days,
Was on vacation.
right? She's like, so you sat on a beach for 3 days drinking rum, and he's like, yep. So she devises her plan of getting him blackout drunk, pretending she was drunk when she really wasn't. And while he was asleep, using all of the rum to set the whole island on fire. Well, it was like the tip of the island.
Yeah. Enough to make the smoke signal.
Yeah, and she's like, look, they're looking for me. They're gonna see this. And as he's grumbling, walking away, he sees the ship arriving, just like she said.
Right.
And he's like, oh, there'll be no living with her after this.
Yeah. I mean, that's just how Jack is. I feel like he always gets lucky somehow.
Right?
Like you think that he's gonna suffer and go through some shit, but it's like no. Luckily, this time he was with Elizabeth, who devised this plan, and she happens to be important enough that there's a bunch of people looking for her. That definitely helped the Dauntless, captained by Norrington, track them down and save them.
Yep.
Now, Elizabeth, she kind of arranges something with Norrington, so she accepts his marriage proposal on the condition that he go face Barboza, his crew, and save Will. And they know where the location of the island is.
Yes, from being there before, apparently. This is kind of one of the situations where they're devising a plan to ambush the pirates. Jack convinces, man, there's a lot going on here. Okay, let's try and unpack this. The Navy, they decide to go and ambush the pirates, and Jack makes it onto the island and convinces Barbossa to spare Will and fight the Navy. So while he's there, he's like, "Oh, they're coming. While you guys are still immortal, don't kill Will on the gold yet. While you guys are still immortal, go fight Norrington's men."
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great part because Jack's like, "All right, to the boats." Oh yeah, you're the boss. You make the rules. Barbossa's just like, "Boys, take a walk." And this is a great scene because they all just go walking into the ocean, and they're just walking along the floor of the ocean, and the moon comes out and shines on them, and they're all just a bunch of skeletons walking along the floor of the ocean. But they send the two comic relief guys as the bait first.
Yeah, the
To
distraction.
distract him. Yeah, and so they put him in dresses and parasols, and Norrington's men are like, the hell? Like, why would two girls in parasols be out here right now? And then, the Black Pearl crew arrives in spectacular fashion. They arrive onto the ship from below.
Pretty epic. With the music, too. It's got this, like, intense music.
The intense music and the crazy fight, and at some point, Governor Swann's wig almost gets taken.
Oh, hell no. He almost gets his wig split.
No, thank you. And of course, when the wig comes off, that's where he looks more like the High Sparrow.
That's when he turns into the High Sparrow. The exact moment.
That's the moment. So I'm trying to keep straight what the heck is going on,
Yeah, because there's like a couple events happening. They're fighting on the Dauntless, and then at that point, that's when Jack fights Barboza.
So it turns out he double crossed everybody and is now fighting Barbossa. But also turns out that this is a pretty ingenious plan because he literally takes a medallion so that he becomes undead also, so that he can fight Barbossa without risk to himself.
Right.
And so that fight's going on. That fight goes on for a while, and the fight on the Dauntless is going on for a while.
There's just a lot of fighting going on. I think Will and Elizabeth are also fighting.
Yeah. And then Elizabeth frees Jack's crew, who then ditch everyone by fleeing on the Black Pearl, which is funny because she's like, "Aren't we going to go back for them? What's wrong with you people?" And then all of a sudden it cuts to her just rowing a boat by herself, and she's like, "Bloody pirates!"
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we're just going to take the Black Pearl and sail away. See it?
So then obviously this had to be planned out because it wouldn't have worked out this way otherwise. But right at the right moment, Jack finally uses that bullet.
Oh yeah.
Barbossa's like, haha, joke's on you, I can't die. But at that moment, he cuts his hand open,
Will.
touches the medallion and throws it to Will, who has cut his hand
Yeah.
open. When has his medallion, he drops both of them into the thing of gold. And Barbossa opens his shirt, and there's blood pooling from his chest.
Oh shit.
Oh, before we elaborate on that though, I think it's interesting the way that the curse works because at some point they put a bomb in one of the undead skeleton guys and then shoves him like out of the moonlight, and so then he becomes a person and then the bomb's still inside of him and then it explodes.
Right, yeah. And they can only cut themselves when they're out of the moonlight.
Yeah, so the curse definitely affects them in a way where the way that they look outside of the moonlight isn't just like a facade or something like that. It's real.
Mm,
So their flesh. I mean, they can't bleed or die even out of the
right, right.
moonlight, but they're still like more intact out of the moonlight, and then they become skeletons in the moonlight.
I think they essentially kind of reset. So you can get fucked up if you're out of the moonlight, but as soon as you go back into the moonlight, you're kind of like back to normal.
That's true. And then when you go out again, you're fine again. Interesting. Um. So yeah, but it's very. I guess it's very dramatic because Barbossa's like, I feel cold, and it's kind of sad and
Yeah.
nice at the same time because you're like, oh, he can feel again. The first and last thing he feels is death.
That's what I loved about the movie, though, honestly, is that all of the characters were super fleshed out. They're all very important to the story. They're all charming in their own special ways.
Yeah,
And including Barbossa. Barbossa is the antagonist for the most of the movie, and he kind of like fucks over the protagonist quite a bit. But then at the end, you still feel sympathetic for him when he's dying,
yeah,
because all he wanted to do was become human again.
yeah. And obviously well, I mean, you don't know this, but if you haven't seen the whole series, but in the end, he becomes a protagonist.
Right.
His story, I think, is very touching in the last movie.
It was very impactful to have Barbosa die, and I think he should have stayed dead. Honestly, that's my opinion. You may not agree with it, but I felt like the whole like vendetta that Jack Sparrow carried with him, and the same gun that Barbosa wanted Jack to kill himself with, he ends up killing Barbosa with. I felt like it was very poetic.
Hmm.
I love that ending, and I hated the fact that they immediately just bring him back in the next movie. I'm just like, what the fuck?
They probably wouldn't have done it if he wasn't such a fan favorite character.
Right? Yeah,
Because you're right, it did have a great poetic ending and stuff like that, but
yeah. It was very
the fans
impactful.
loved him so much that they ended up bringing him back because of that. And I don't hate it because I liked where his story went.
Well, the thing is, I felt like they felt the need to create a story for him because of the fact that now he's a staple in the series. The movie already had all these interesting characters, and I think it was enough to fill the following movies. They didn't need to bring Barbosa back necessarily, but I feel like I do agree that he did such a great job that they're like, fuck, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot with this one, so we have to find a way to bring him back.
Yeah. So yeah, back to Barbosa. He dies,
Oh, poor Barbosa.
and in the next scene, Jack Sparrow is in the process of being hanged.
He's still a pirate. At the end of the day, he's still a pirate.
Yeah. So still standing on the gallows, about to be dropped, and Elizabeth is kind of being forced to watch it in the back. I love how Will shows up though, and he's like, Elizabeth, I've always loved you. Also, I look like a musketeer. And then he charges off into the
Maybe he upgraded into a musketeer. He's all three of them put together. They make
right.
Will Turner.
Was he in the musketeer? No, that was Leonardo DiCaprio, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, so the musketeer Will charges off, and I think they pull the lever. Right when they pull the lever, Will throws his sword, and Jack's freaking standing on the sword.
On his tippy toes.
Yeah, which is horrible. But eventually, they're able to cut the rope, and he jumps down and cuts his bonds on the sword that he was just standing on.
This is kind of a shitty plan. I don't even know what the hell Will was planning here.
I don't think he was, because even at the end, he's like, I don't regret what I did, even if you're hanging two men instead of one after this or something like that. But it seems like they work well together because they have the rope and they're running off just clotheslining people and stuff, and then they
Yeah.
get the guys around the pillar and they both pull at the same time to smash them into the pillar. And I'm like, that's some
Hmm.
pretty coordinated movement that they had to have practiced.
They spent a lot of time with each other, so I think they, especially because they're like manning an entire ship together, so it probably took a lot of coordinating and just understanding each other, learning each other the best and most effective way to communicate with each other. So I think they got to the point where now they can kind of just like read each other's body language.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, um, eventually they end up back up on the same little fort cliff edge that Elizabeth first
Hmm.
fell off of.
That scenic view.
Yeah, and Elizabeth declares that she's going to be siding with Will and Jack, and Norrington's like,
Damn.
he takes it pretty well for just having his fiance break up with him
He
at that
does.
moment.
Surprisingly, yeah, he does. I think all this time of like chasing after her and trying to marry her and like
Right?
having it go sideways each time. I almost felt like he's like second guessing it, or maybe he's starting to finally understand her relationship to them. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
just like
I think.
she's always going to choose them over him, and so he's just like, yeah, it is what it is.
So not only does at that point Norrington let Jack go, he also lets Elizabeth go. And then Governor Swann, he doesn't exactly approve, but he doesn't disapprove either. He's just like, this is what you choose. And she's like, yep. And he's like, all right. And then he walks off. And then he also kind of. Something just happened. Sorry, I thought it was Kira falling down the stairs for a second. I was about to freak out.
Oh shit!
Okay, but
It
yeah,
was Andrew that fell down the stairs. You're like, oh, that's
I
fine.
know, right? Yeah, that's good. He'll dust himself off. um, Not only does he let Jack go, he lets Elizabeth go, and Governor Swann is like, okay, you're right about Elizabeth and Will, but then Norrington is like, yeah, we can give Jack a day's head start.
He's not too serious about catching him again.
Clearly, I think he's just like, I just lost everything right now. Fuck it.
Yeah, not high up on his priority list.
I know, but he took it well for just yeah, he took that pretty well.
Let's not gloss over how Jack escapes. So he dives off the cliff, and you're like, okay, so what the fuck is he gonna do after that? But you realize that
Right?
the black pearl is waiting at the bottom, and they scoop him up, so the crew came back for him.
That's nice. So everything works out for Jack.
Not only that, but now they declare Jack Sparrow as Captain Jack Sparrow of the Black Pearl once again.
Yeah. Yay.
End of movie. Dun 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 dun.
I'm gonna start making a list of posts for the future.
Ooh, very nice. And on that note, that is a wrap on Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Caribbean.
If you made it to the end of our podcast, then you no longer need to walk the plank.
Yay. Finally a good one.
Any final thoughts or closing comments?
Something we totally I thought you were gonna bring this up, but something you failed to mention is how big of a fan I was when this movie came out.
Oh, you can talk about that now.
So big, in fact, that this was 2003, so the internet was fairly newish, and email fan groups were a big thing. So I attempted to create a Pirates of the Caribbean
What?
email fan group.
I don't even remember this.
I was a part of one for Newsies. That's how that happened. All that
So,
Newsies.
so what is this? Like, what's the concept of it?
Well, in the Newsies one, we all had our own like newsy character persona that we had in the group.
Huh. Interesting.
And there would be some interaction and stuff, but I want to say a lot of it was on AOL Instant Messenger. Like
Okay.
you would get groups together, and then you would go into like a group chat on AIM and do some role playing. And then there would be like a bunch of people in the community would be writing fan fiction, and they would put out roll calls for characters, and so you would like submit your character and then try to be in people's fan fictions, and then you could just just generally talk about the movie. But those are kind of the two
Damn.
big things that I remember most about the Community.
Okay.
Um, but one thing I did was I created one for Pirates of the Caribbean, one of these communities, which had like 3 members in it before I gave up on it. And then I also created an entire website for it. And part of the website was
Angel
the
Fire.
form that you would fill out. Yeah, on Angel Fire to the form that you would fill out to join the community, the email community.
Damn. Wow.
I remember like I spent a bunch of time. I wasn't using Photoshop then, but some lesser equivalent to Photoshop to edit together like the banners and the pictures and all the little buttons and menus and stuff. And
This is high school time?
yeah,
Was Nadia also in on this? Because I know that you guys were besties around that time.
yeah. I don't remember if she joined my Pirates group, but she was a part of the Newsies group that I was part of. She was the one who got me into that.
Well, she was also into like super into pirates, right?
I think so. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Or she just into Orlando Bloom?
She was definitely she was really into Orlando Bloom.
Dang, you should have kept that up.
I know, but after a while, I it was just kind of like a one week, 2 week, maybe like a month obsession, and then I quickly got over it. But once I kind of achieved my goal of completing the website and getting the form workable and stuff like that, after everything worked, I kind of lost interest. So it's
Aw,
more about the journey than the destination for me.
true.
So, and the music was super popular, and the Buddhist marching band that I was a part of, I think my first year of college did the Pirates music for their show. I want to say there because I never really felt part of that band.
That would have been great to cover in band.
Yeah, it
Pirates
was
music.
fun.
Oh, I haven't seen this movie in probably over a decade, probably closer to 2 decades, if I'm being honest. No, like it's been a real long time though, and I just felt like it was a fucking awesome movie. Probably just as
Hmm.
awesome as when I first saw it, because it had been so long and I forgot a lot about it. I just gotta say, it definitely holds up. I'm convinced that it's probably, in my opinion, the best in the series from what I've seen,
Oh yeah,
and it's so well written. The dialogue, the story, yeah,
they could have stopped there and it would have been fine. I mean, not saying that I don't. I don't think the following movies are bad. I enjoy them, but they're just not as good as the first.
yeah.
I still enjoy the whole series though, even the one with just Jack Sparrow.
And it's even more impressive because they built this entire story, this world, this lore out of nothing. There's nothing to go off of other than just the aesthetics of the ride and, like the quotes like the dead men tell no tales and all that stuff.
Yeah, and the song.
But like other than that, they kind of had free reign. They could have gone any direction they wanted with this.
Yeah, they did well. They did well. One thing that I would kind of recommend actually is the on Disney Plus. There's a show called Behind the Attraction, and one of the episodes is all about Pirates of the Caribbean, and they go into the history of it. They go into the mechanics of it, the planning, and the changes, the movie. And one of the interesting things they go into is the whatchamacallit, the Shanghai ride.
Mm.
It's a whole different ride from all the other Pirates of the Caribbeans, and the story behind that is really really interesting. So if anybody gets a chance,
I haven't seen the behind the scenes, but that ride is fucking cool. You can just go on YouTube and see that, but
yeah, exactly.
pretty awesome. Like it basically puts the OG one here in California to shame,
Yeah,
but
it does.
it's never going to be the original. That's partially why they haven't really changed much with the one in California, is because you want to preserve it, like it's part of history. That's what
Yeah,
spawned the entire franchise to begin with.
yep. And I was mentioning before, it's interesting. I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but after the movie, they inserted Jack all throughout the ride,
Right.
hiding here and there, and I think it's supposed to be like they're looking for him, but he's hiding.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because just the popularity of the franchise has declined or because of his controversies, but they ended up taking him entirely out of the ride except at the very end when he's kind of sitting with the treasure and just singing
Yeah.
yo ho.
What did you think of the slight love triangle between the main protagonists? I want to say slight because in this movie, it's like they lay the foundation, but they don't quite lean into it yet.
Yeah, definitely. They touch on like a little sexual tension between Jack and Elizabeth, and they dig a little deeper into it in later movies. But at the end of the day, she ends up with Will, and
But she secretly yearns for Jack the entire time.
or at least probably has fantasies that she would never actually act on.
Do you think it just the whole like the tried and true bad boy, like I can change him type of thing? Like, is that what makes Jack exciting?
Yeah, maybe. Or I can tame him or whatever.
Because Will is the opposite of that. You know, he's
Yeah.
like the good guy that
Yeah.
you get with after you've had your fling with the bad boy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it just keeps playing back to Elizabeth's fascination with pirates. And I think because of that, that inherent fascination that she has, she's always going to have this like strange attraction for Jack because he's a good guy and they work with him frequently, but also because he's a fucking pirate. So that's really all you need. It's basically like saying, oh, he's in a band. It's like, oh, that's hot.
Right.
He's hot just because he's a pirate.
I know. I get it though. Girl things. Always attracted to the worst guys, right?
You always want what you can't have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to definitely touch on this, and I guess this kind of plays into what you were mentioning before, but thanks to this movie, the concept of pirates were super popular for such a long time, and it got pretty annoying, to be honest.
Annoying. I loved it. What are you talking about?
For fucking years, people were just going ape shit over pirate anything. Every single Halloween, that was the most popular costume to have was something pirate related.
Or Jack
And
Sparrow, straight up Jack
yeah,
Sparrow.
exactly. Everyone wanted to be Jack Sparrow. Everyone wanted to be like him. Everyone fucking adored him. And after a couple years, I'm just like, okay, I'm enough of this. I'm kind of over pirates forever.
Never. It's so funny actually. Um, Nadia and I are going to a Renaissance fair this year, and we're contemplating going on the pirate weekend that they have. I might put together a pirate costume.
What? So it's going to be nautical themed?
Probably. I think we went there for pirate weekend last year, and it's just a bunch of people dressed as pirates.
Hmm. They don't actually do anything involving water or anything like that.
I don't know.
That'd be kind of cool.
I know.
Well, I just wanted to say that at that time, it just seemed like pirates would be a thing forever until eventually vampires became the new craze. You know why.
Yes, we know. Speaking of which, there's this makeup brand called ColourPop that they recently did a Twilight themed line of makeup. And the day that it dropped, it sold out within literally minutes. Pretty much all resellers got it because they have like bots that do the buying for them.
Oh, damn.
And the Twilight fan base is fucking nuts, and so everyone was livid. And I tried to get it too. Like I was right there. I was logged in, ready to go. I had my card information inputted already. All I had to do was put it in my cart and check out. And once you got through the queue, it was sold out, and everyone was
Damn.
livid.
Are you watching anything lately? Film or TV?
Man, I just watched a show called Legion.
What'd you think of that? Check out our last episode and find out.
Right. No, I remember last time, like when we recorded for Legion, I had something that I wanted to recommend, but now I can't even remember what it is. And I'm trying to remember, like, oh, what have I watched recently?
One Piece.
One Piece is pretty good. I'm about to start watching the new live action Avatar show, though.
Damn. Is that the new craze now? They're just going to do live action renditions of animes?
I know, right? But I heard this one's actually good because we all know how the movie flopped, right?
Probably because I never watched the show, but I thought it was decent. It wasn't my favorite movie.
Everyone just shot on it so hard, and for me, I like a lot of people blame the actors, and I didn't feel like it was the actors. I feel like it was like the writing, and they made really weird decisions, like changing the pronunciation of things that were obviously
Ong.
established in the original show. Yeah, so it was weird things like that. But and then another complaint was that the cast was whitewashed, which was pretty true. So
That was true. Yeah. That's probably more interesting than what Brenda and I have been watching.
what's
We
that?
are watching the new season of Love is Blind on Netflix.
Oh lordy. I'm
So
out.
go check that out. I cannot believe that girl likes that guy. That's
Oh
all
my
I gotta
god.
say. Aflixionados is available wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop on the first Saturday of each month, 5 a.m. Pacific. If you like what you heard, please consider giving us a like, a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening and joining Stephanie and I. This has been Aflixionados Podcast, episode 37, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Dude, we talked about this. The right/movie is Caribbean. Everything else is Caribbean.
And we will see you all next time. Drink up, Minhad is your woe.
Woo.